I meant to hit stream. I accidentally hit the wrong button. Sorry, this is starting a little bit later. By a little bit later, I mean almost an hour later than I had intended. And right now I'm on Team Cup of Water, or Mason Jar of Water as it turned out being. And I'm not talking about Kentucky or West Virginia water. I'm talking about dihydrogen monoxide. Now, Michigan actually has an independent commission. Now, I'm not going to do what normally occurs with an independent commission. And this dumbass problem with Michigan precincts is I have to do this fucking dumbass thing where if there's an island, I have to do that. So, anyway. Okay, that is as far as I need to go there. I need to do that. And I had actually intended to do this on the last stream, but my stream kicked the bucket. Hey, Frisky Island and God Politics. Yeah, I'm doing pretty darn good. God of Politics knows that I just went through a marathon session as Chief Justice on his mock Supreme Court, and yeah, that was a case and a half, if I'm honest. And the fact that you got a progressive and a hardcore libertarian to actually agree on the verdict of a case regarding economic issues and banking regulations is kind of a shock, but that may be saying too much, so pretend I didn't say anything about that. God of Politics does. I sort of do, but I don't. I also have a campaign trail style game that we started in the glorious year of our Lord, 1788. And we've gotten up to the election of 1812, and we're about to start the 1816 cycle. It's a really... Timeline got really weird in that one, simply because of Electoral College rules. That was a fun one. Yeah, no, sometimes being the Chief Justice of the court is physically and mentally exhausting. And that's the case I know in God of Politics, mock government. Goodness gracious me. Okay. What can I extend? Okay, I can cover this bit, I would presume. I mean, I pay attention to legislative stuff that occurs, but I also don't take as much stock as maybe I should until an issue gets brought before the court. And a lot of the reason why is because at the end of the day, as a justice, politics don't really concern me. You know, even if I have my own personal compulsions, it matters not what course of action the government takes. And for me to wade into political waters would be unbecoming of the behavior that is required of a justice. So basically, I try to avoid anything like that. Isn't that senator the isn't Jenkins the FTC commissioner as well? this part of Detroit. Oh yeah, let's also toss up district lines. And if you want to post up the link, go ahead and do so. Got a politics, because guess what? You have that right. It's called free speech, and I've always said on this channel I tend to be an absolutist with regards to that right, in the same way that real life Justice Hugo Black was, even if Hugo Black had his own personal failings and faults. And for those of you who know your court history, you'll understand what I mean by that. Oh, for God's sakes, YouTube. I waited 40 fucking minutes. There you go, YouTube. But yeah, for those of you who know about the history of the Supreme Court, yeah, Justice Hugo Black is a pretty controversial figure, but is generally well regarded these days, both by liberals and conservatives. Conservatives like him. Conservatives like him because he was technically an originalist, and I would argue the first originalist. And he tended to follow the textualist school of thought. But liberals tend to regard him well because he ruled very much in favor of civil rights in the vast majority of cases. That said, Hugo Black did have some issues. He ruled in favor of the United States in Korematsu versus United States, which was a case regarding Japanese internment camps. You can see where I may have an issue with that. It's basically the imprisonment of people without the writ of habeas corpus, and especially in the case, it was technically a concentration camp. You can see how someone like myself would have significant issues with that. Yeah, I figured, I remember he was the FTC commissioner. I'm also glad we finally have an AG who is actually willing to show up, because those instances where there was either no AG or the AG simply refused to show, it was really hard to have the administration's perspective on that issue. And that's kind of the purpose of the AG, at least in a lot of instances, is not only to determine if, there's some massive legal issue that needs addressing in the United States, but also to represent the administration before the High Court. Yeah, Leroy Jenkins. I wish the FTC commissioner was Leroy Jenkins, because that would be a lot more fun. Why do I get a feeling I'm drawing this kind of like Wisconsin? This is Michigan, baby. Also, earlier today, I drove out to Grundy, Virginia. For those of y'all who don't know, Grundy is a pretty small town in the corner of Virginia, closest to, I guess, the closest to West Virginia and Kentucky. It kind of Grundy itself doesn't border both of those states, but the county it's in does, and that's Buchanan County. And that's because I've been looking into potentially applying to a school out there called the Appalachian School of Law. Yeah, weirdly, being on the mock government Supreme Court has really kind of told me that I'm interested in doing law for the sole purpose of entering into the judicial field. Because the reality is I don't really have much interest. Wow, that was a slight error on my part. I didn't realize that I had so dramatically exceeded the population threshold. Okay. There we go. Okay, I guess 4 is going to cover this part. But yeah, no, I will confess that I've had maybe an unnatural attraction to that sort of politics. And I don't even want to call it politics, because it kind of does the court dirty. As well as our judicial system, but I think to not recognize the political implications of the Supreme Court or even local courts is wrong. There is absolutely a political effect to how a judge or a justice will rule. Some justices on the Supreme Court, and I would suppose other judges, do kind of discuss or relate or understand the consequences or factor that into their decisions. There are others who just say, well, if our decision does something that is that affects lawmaking, it's up to it's up to lawmakers to catch up, basically. And by that, it's kind of just a situation of, oh, you're not a fan of the decision? Well, tough shit. Basically, rule how you please and then let the law catch up, or let the legislature catch up. In some ways, I think that's a wrong way to do it, but I also don't have a good answer to people who are maybe concerned about the I don't have a good answer to the people who are concerned that judicial activism may creep into decisions of that nature, right? Or you basically say, let the legislature catch up, or, well, they've overstepped their bounds, but the consequences of overruling this case outweigh the factors against it, or anything like that. Yeah. The odd 21 is out. This is Dave's redistricting app. I disagree. I think the court still rules close to close to like 40% of the time, 9-0. I forget exactly what the statistic is, but for the most part, the court is unanimous. Though obviously there are the controversial cases are the ones, or I'll say more interesting cases are the ones that produce split decisions. Your 5-4, 6-3s. Yes, the court has obviously become political. I'm not going to argue that. What I am going to argue is that I don't think the court has become entirely political in its decision making. As Chief Justice Roberts has stated, there are no Bush judges or Clinton judges or Obama judges or even Trump judges. There's just judges. Obviously, you can make the criticism that a lot of cases do have a result that is maybe more political than some would prefer. I'm not going to argue that this isn't the case. I think that would be improper and also factually incorrect. But I think the English. I don't actually think the Warren Court was nearly as activist as some may claim. Because in my eyes, I think a lot of what the Warren Court did was probably correct. I mean, I don't understand why it would be incorrect to say that, say, Brown v. Board, that landmark case, was an incorrect ruling. In my eyes, no ruling could have been more correct than Brown v. Board. And there were a few other cases like that where I think you really have to dive into it and realize that, guess what? Yeah, separate is inherently unequal. Oops, a bit overboard there. How can you say that that sort of a landmark case is a bad decision? You're dealing directly with people who trying to argue that segregation is perfectly okay. And how isn't that not only not equal, but how is that just under the due process clause of either the Fifth or the 14th Amendments? You know, there are absolutely problems with the way the court has ruled in the past, and there have been obvious cases of bad precedent. But I think people want to view the court in a way that suits their own personal political agenda, if that makes sense. Okay, that's technically contiguous, even if I kind of feel uncomfortable about that. Okay, I think that allows us to just draw the rest of the state. Not sure how this is going to look. All right. So let's lock this one. Let's turn off the precinct line, switch it to precinct view. Turn on the labels or the background map. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 Democratic districts. Yeah, exactly. I mean, is it really the expansion of the rights given the privileges and immunities as well as the 9th and 10th Amendments? It's more just that they codified what was actually there. That's why, unlike a lot of, say, more libertarian-leaning people, I don't really have the animosity for the Warren Court that a lot of them will. I mean, obviously I have my personal favorites. Yeah, let's not elect them. Oh, the Arizona GOP is self-immolating in a manner similar to the Nevada Democratic Party. Let's see if my bet is correct. Oh, wow. Actually, that's not at all what I expected. Holy crap. What is that? 1, 2... Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5... GOP districts in the composite. Actually, this is reasonably fair. 5 GOP districts. I see 5 or 6. Okay, 6. 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, 5 Democratic districts with, well, actually, that's 5 competitive districts. 3 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, that's actually a pretty interesting map. Let's look at the data sets. Yeah, that one is not one that I didn't expect. 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 8. Yeah, I expected that. And then we flip it to Senator, and whoa, hey buddy, don't go like that. Flip it to the AG. Okay. This is a reasonably fair map. I'm kind of proud of that. Now this is going to be heavy Democrat. Grand Rapids. Grand Rapids is like, no. I think President 2008 should probably be left out of the data sets, but I think this is a very fair map, and I'm very happy about that. All right, we're going to go back to maps. I guess we'll do Minnesota. All right, Minnesota. Yeah, it should have about 7. We're going to go 2010 precincts. Oh, yeah, and because DRA is kind of slow when loading 2010 data. Switch it to total population. We're going to use a composite. Now, Minnesota is weird because it has split control. I'm going to actually... that's because I'm not using the 2020 data sets, and DRA actually hasn't completed them all. There we go. Now, Minnesota is going to lose a district, and that means they're going to have 7 districts. So, the first is southern Minnesota, and they're very likely to keep this. By the way, this is almost going to certainly wind up being a court-drawn map. So, I'm going to attempt... to draw this by start there, that county. Okay. Let me turn on the county lines background map. So what's likely going to wind up happening is that the courts are going to draw a map that will broadly keep the districts where they currently sit. And just expand districts to cover the areas that are going to be from the district that gets lost. I also think that they're going to move the 7th more to cover the Iron Range, so that all of southern Minnesota is up there, right? That's not an unreasonable guess, I would think. But who knows? I could be completely wrong about this, so... Alright, the second. Let me cover this area close to the Twin Cities. And we'll see. Don't want to enter the Twin Cities too much because from what I found, courts don't really like combining urban, suburban, and rural areas. Okay, that is all contiguous. It looks... Nope. So I'm going to have to erase... Oh, God. And this is why we can't be friends. The third covers this part of Twin Cities, so we're gonna just quickly fill out. Oh, and whatever, that's fine. And keeping the county lines on is probably a good idea. And basically it kind of just forms a little U around the main part of Minneapolis. Or a C, as it were. I do have a map of the districts sitting right here. Hey, there's a Minnesotan in the chat. Oh, it's Nick Quaper. Yeah, the GOP absolutely has a path in Michigan at the presidential level. I think in the Rust Belt in general, rural areas still have a lot of legacy Democrats who think that the Democratic Party is Joe Biden, which is fairly moderate on most social issues, but is slightly left-leaning on economic issues. I don't think for a moment that these rural and small town areas in the Rust Belt quite fully comprehend just how left-wing the majority of the Democratic Party has gotten across the board. Now, I'm not saying that these areas are like super conservative. They're not. Just they're not super liberal either. You know, a good analogy is basically just look at the driftless area in Wisconsin. This is an area that is very much not... Okay, so I should probably actually draw the fifth first. Now, this is an area that is basically the bread and butter moderates. And I'm not trying to argue either that the GOP is more moderate than the Democrats, because I don't think either is a realistic claim to make that either party is more moderate. It just depends on where you are and the particular flavor of your local Republican and Democratic parties. And my reason for saying that is basically because it's kind of true. Some Republican parties at the state or even local level are a lot more moderate than their Democratic counterparts at that level. And in some places, the opposite is true. Oops. And that's just because of, well, there's a lot of history behind it, you know. And then, of course, there are local areas where one or even both parties are pretty extreme. Um, Again, and this has to do with, to put it lightly, local history. My goodness. But that's kind of just a thing. I think part of it has to do with Trump, and I think Trump exacerbated some trends in American politics. And by a few, I mean kind of a lot, actually. There we go, the 6th. There. But I also think that there was a lot of trends that were ongoing as well. That I don't think Trump really contributed all that much to, or if anything, started. But maybe that's just me being myself, right? Okay. Let's get rid of the county lines and switch it to that. Internal labels. Probably not the most fair map, but I think the 7th is not nearly as democratic. This has the Klobuchar map in it, and if we turn it to, say, President 2016, we can see 2, 3, 4. It's a 4-3 map in favor of the Republicans. Look at the president. The 6 is the only red district. Attorney General. Yeah, that's what I would have expected. This is the Klobuchar map, and yeah, that is what you should expect with the Klobuchar map. Governor's map is a lot more even. Senator map, that one's a bit of a shock, honestly. But there's a lot of Democratic favorable maps that I think are a little bit... I think they're wrong. I think that this is probably closer to reality than the composite, but I'll put the composite up there just because not unreasonably unfair. It definitely shows that the 2nd and 7th are competitive districts, and they likely would be. Yeah, it wasn't the best map I've drawn, but I was also trying to avoid using partisan data because I think the courts are going to try and draw it. Mississippi. Let's make sure I spell it correctly. Use 2010. And the reason why I'm doing this is because it takes a really long time to load it with the new data. Now, this is another place where I think the Republican Party may make an attempt to do something that's probably illegal. Because we can draw with partisan data. Oh, you know, it really does help if I'm not using the map colors. Okay, let's try this again. And it's really just getting rid of Jackson, Mississippi. That is the difficult part. And like I said, this is very likely illegal, what I'm trying to do. And would absolutely be challenged in court. But my goal isn't to draw a perfectly legal map. My goal is what each state may attempt to do leading up to the midterms in terms of redistricting. So even if maybe I may not like it, or would even endorse it, you know, I'm trying to play as each state. And if you can hear my cat in the background, he is probably mad that I, okay, went a bit too far there. Basically, no, went too far. Didn't even realize it. Nice. I think is as close as I'm going to get. Alright, so let's turn off the precinct lines, put on the labels, and yeah, Mississippi may try to do this. Yeah, I think I drew Minnesota a bit weird. It's actually not that hard to get rid of the VRA district. Which Republican do I think has the best shot in the 2024 general election? Probably a Nikki Haley type, someone who's a bit more moderate, admittedly maybe even a bit more neocon. Rand Paul, I think, would also do fairly well. But in terms of the nomination, you're probably going to get a DeSantis Hawley type if Trump doesn't run. Yeah. That's pretty nice, actually. You can get that done. President 2008. Yeah, only one district changes competitiveness. Yeah, I wish they would add more data for Mississippi because it would make it a lot easier. But yeah, Mississippi is an easy state to draw if you understand how that state works. What's next? Missouri. Ooh, this is a good one. This is going to be an interesting one. Because I can draw out pretty easily the Kansas City district. That is not difficult. Republicans have the trifecta here, and they will absolutely be working on drawing it. Now, the first is Kansas City. Oh, and let me just absolutely make sure I do that. That way I can see where I am. This is St. Louis. St. Louis. Now, the GOP has to concede that they're going to have to draw a Democratic district in St. Louis. It's just kind of a fact of the state, and you know they're going to do that. But Kansas City, you can draw out, though it does require some creativity. But here's the thing. The Supreme Court isn't going to wade into it, and the state court is not going to invalidate it because it is a partisan gerrymander, not a racial gerrymander, which I have some issues with the way they've done that legislation because it's either all okay or none of it is, if that makes any sense. The reason why I say that is there's a court ruling, I think this one was Shaw v. Reno, where the dissent was basically saying that racial gerrymandering, even for noble goals, is still a discriminatory practice. Now, whether you want to agree with that or not, you know, that's up to you, and you're free to do so. But I've always felt it a bit sketchy at best. Also, how would you all feel, just, I'm going to look in the comments here in a few seconds. How would you all feel if I started doing, started having Streamlabs on my streams so that y'all can, you know, do that stuff? Because I don't have access to Super Chat just yet. And as soon as I get that, I'll absolutely be putting the headphones on. That way I can hear when y'all actually do Super Chat and stuff like that. Because my hearing is pretty god-awful. God, I always hate these tiny little, you know, street corner precincts. They're just like, why do you separate them? And it's like, really? So, yeah. I'll show you how to get rid of Kansas City. Just a few seconds. You know, some already are. I know New Mexico, their speaker, the speaker of the New Mexico State House, he said that a redistricting commission was bad for their political. Okay, there you go. There you go. Yeah, I think absolutely the Democrats are going to come back, realize that the independent commissions were maybe poorly thought out, at least from a perspective of political gain, which is a problem because they are absolutely the right decision. The problem is they haven't been able to get Republican-leaning states on board, except for, say, Idaho, and, well, that's such a heavily Republican state with so few districts, you're not going to get a Democratic district drawn, and none of those seats are going to go for a Democrat except in a very rare circumstance. But that's kind of that thing. I mean, yeah, you absolutely can do that, but Washington has a commission. Fun fact. As much as I hate doing this, I'm going to put these GOP precincts in this district just because they're on the same side of, I want to say it's actually the Missouri River that splits off right there. Yeah, that's the Missouri, because Missouri actually pops out over here. And when I say the Missouri, I'm talking about the Missouri River. DeSantis would absolutely be towards his style, but he actually can't if he remains a Florida resident. Because there's this funny little provision in the Electoral College, specifically in the Constitution, that says that you can't vote for two people from the same state with your Electoral College vote. So yeah, that's a quote fun fact. So Trump would have to choose someone like, say, maybe a Hawley or a Ted Cruz or someone else. I think I want to go out this way with this district. Just because it's going to make it a little bit more red, which is going to be useful for the future. Basically, I'm trying to future-proof this map for suburban shift. And there is only so much that you can do for that. And as part of that, I'm going to be drawing this district to include a lot more of the rural areas that are a lot more favorable to the Republican Party. I also don't want to take too many of them because Kansas City. There we go. Because if I want to draw out Kansas City, I'm going to also need a lot of rural area as well to deal with their suburban shift. Whoop. And that should... It's fine by me. Okay, the third district I'm going to put up top. Let's look at that. Yep, okay, all contiguous, and that's nice. Yeah, no, DeSantis would not, Trump would not pick DeSantis because, again, he can't. I'm going to pull a trick from the Louisiana GOP here. Call it unfair, call it terrible, but, you know, like I said, I'm pulling a trick from my playbook, which is use the state border to your advantage. Because why not? Also, I'm genuinely shocked at how much of Kansas City I could throw into this district. Alright, I think that's as much as I'm going to be able to fit. I guess that's the way that works. It's a little bit less red than I would have liked to make it. But what are you going to do? Of course, this also has a slightly... The composite in Missouri also favors the Democrats a little bit more than it probably should, simply for the sole fact that you do have a few competitive elections there that Missouri just doesn't have anymore. And that's basically because Missouri used to be a quasi-competitive state back at the start of the decade, and no longer is. And honestly, I think maybe they should weigh more recent elections a little bit more heavily. But that's kind of just me. Then again, some recent elections in these data sets are not representative. So take that for what you will, right? Oh, for God's sakes, YouTube, catch up. I'm not necessarily sure that the Libertarians would back a ticket with Ron Paul, but it would be hard for a lot of Libertarian-leaning voters to state ticket with Rand Paul. And that has everything to do with Rand Paul being somewhat popular among libertarian-leaning voters, but also because he is somewhat principled. There are, you can make some accusations that he sold out to the Trump wing of the Republican Party. That aren't entirely incorrect. But he also, I think, was trying to angle for his own political future. And honestly, any politician is going to do that, and no matter how virtuous. Alrighty. And I think that's every single... Really? Where are my unassigned precincts? Ah. Really? I have a non-contiguous district? Okay, so where is it non-contiguous? Oh, okay. Oh, whoops. I guarantee, yeah, it's all of this stuff. See what I mean by these tiny little street corner precincts that irritate me? Okay, that's all of them. Cool. So I can lock that, switch that to there. Get rid of the precinct lines, put up the labels, and switch to the partisan lane. And that, folks, is how you draw out Kansas City. As slightly ugly as that is, it will help him a little bit, yeah. That's not an incorrect assessment. But yeah, seriously, to the people watching, if I were to get Streamlabs with, donation sounds and all that, would y'all be interested in that? Because, like I said, I don't have access to Super Chat, just because my channel is just a touch too small. Speaking of, likes, comments, and subscriptions, they really do help. I'm not just saying that because I want, more fame or fortune or anything. I'm not making any money off of this channel yet, hopefully. Anyway, I really would very much appreciate that sort of thing. You know, I do have a Patreon. There's a link in the description of this, maybe. I don't know. I know in my normal videos there is, but... Yeah, I mean, I would definitely like to hear a notification when somebody asks a really good question. Just because it is hard for me to keep track of chat and, say, doing something like this where I'm redistricting or if I'm playing a game and I'm very involved in that game. But, you know, that's a personal thing. Let's look at the data sets. I think this is probably going to wind up being the last state simply because at the end of the day, it's late. I've been somehow managing to stream for an hour, which is impressive given the state of my internet. Yeah, okay. That's not at all shocking to me. This was a competitive election, if I remember correctly. Yep. Still holds. I mean, this is going to hold. Yeah, exactly. Though the second is not nearly as red. This one, that one still holds. That's the impressive one. Because that was a very competitive election. Okay. This one, it's not going to hold. That held up better than I thought it would. I thought I was going to have 3 or 4 districts flip. That held up better than I thought it did. That is a dirty gerrymander. And I wasn't even trying to be that dirty. That's President 2008, which was within like 2,000 votes of flipping the state statewide, and it's 6-2. That is dirty. I'm going to send this to the Missouri GOP. I'm slightly kidding on that. I'm not actually going to do that. I think some element of Trumpism is definitely going to remain in the Republican Party. Maybe not in terms of style, but maybe until the rhetoric is going to get borrowed. But I don't think Trump himself levels of Trumpism are going to stay. I think elements of it are going to stay. But that's a personal thing. Yeah, absolutely. It could be a competitive district. It could also be a safe district. We're going to get to Montana at some future junction. If it's the next state, I'll absolutely do it, but I'm doing this alphabetically. Okay, well, I guess we're doing Montana. That. And I'm still not entirely positive. I think Montana uses, or more accurately, I think Montana... There we go. It's partisan controlled. But I'm not positive on that. I'm not entirely positive on that. But something tells me that the Republican Party is not going to be too keen on drawing a competitive seat in Montana. because in a state as heavily favorable to the Republicans as Montana, they're going to want to boost their margins as much as possible. They're going to want to take advantage of the prime opportunity they have to draw a two Republican map, basically. And it's really the the western part of the state that can make Montana competitive. That and the reservations. And this is kind of going to be proof of that. Well, not really. Turn off the precinct lines, put up the labels. But if you draw it a little bit more fairly, you'll find, and not like completely butcher the map. Okay. There you go. DRA being slow again. Love it. I think the reason why liberal Republicans do so well in New England is because they're not like super socially conservative. They're fairly fiscally conservative. You know, they're the type of person who doesn't like massive government expenditures and all that. But they are not going to be going gung-ho culture war. Okay, well, that's Senate 2018. That's to be expected. Tester did win the state narrowly. I didn't quite expect both districts to be blue, though. If we flip it to the Attorney General, it's both very safe Republican. Yeah, Montana weirdly has the election results of a swing state, but it's not really a swing state. Montana is very weird. Montana's politics are pretty idiosyncratic. So I'm going to put it on the composite. I think this is maybe a bit not quite as blue as it, or not quite as red as it should be, but given the state's weird election history, that's not entirely unfair. Anyway, I'm going to actually end the stream here. I've been streaming for an hour and a quarter, and it's 11 o'clock, and I kind of want to go to sleep. So take it easy, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed. I'll see y'all next time. Again, if you like the content, likes, comments, subscriptions, they greatly do help. And I hope y'all have a very lovely evening, and I'll see y'all Monday.